Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today into world building.
Ah,
You
yes.
guys gave us a ton of YouTube videos on it. Some really cool stuff, actually.
Yeah, there are some pretty insightful ones in there about like building worlds from scratch,
Yeah.
creating those fictional landscapes.
Yeah. We've got like fallen empires,
Oh, yeah.
dragons, hidden
Loads
society.
of good stuff.
So today, we're going to analyze all that, review it, and kind of break it all down for you.
Absolutely.
So by the end, hopefully you'll have a ton of ideas to create your own world.
Yeah, a whole toolbox full of ideas. What really struck me going through these videos is that balance,
Mm.
that line between keeping things realistic and letting that imagination just run wild.
Right, right.
Because it's not just about like, oh, cool creatures and magic systems. It's about making it believable,
Yeah.
like a place that feels like it has its own history, its own logic.
Like it could actually exist.
Exactly.
Yeah, and one of the videos actually brought up Lord of the Rings as a perfect example of this.
Yeah, Tolkien. Classic.
Yeah, Tolkien, he really like blended, elements like language evolution with those fantastical elements like, the elves, the
Yeah.
dwarves.
Right. It feels grounded even with all the magic and fantastical creatures.
Yeah.
It's all about that internal consistency, really. That's the takeaway for us world builders.
Okay.
You can have dragons, you can have magic, but whatever rules you create to govern those things,
Yeah.
they have to make sense within the world itself.
So, okay, let's take that realism thing a little bit further.
Okay.
One of the videos brought up this really cool example from Game of Thrones.
Oh, interesting. Which one?
Um, the Greyjoys.
Oh, the Greyjoys.
Yeah, and that whole like harsh island environment they live in.
The Iron Islands. Yeah. That's perfect for this. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about environment shaping a society.
Right.
They've got constant storms, scarce resources. The sea's their livelihood, but it's also a constant threat.
Yeah.
And it shows. It's reflected in their religion, their emphasis on strength, their whole raiding culture.
We do not so.
Exactly. Even their motto screams environment.
So I guess like thinking about your own world,
Mm-hmm.
how does your environment influence like the people that you're creating?
That's the question, isn't it?
Right. Imagine a society in a lush rainforest
Oh, yeah.
versus like a scorching desert.
Completely different vibes.
Right. Like how would they be different?
Oh, man. The possibilities are just endless,
Right.
which I think is part of what makes world building so captivating.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the physical environment, right? These videos, they also delve into the whole dynamics of power,
Mm-hmm.
social structures, how those things play out in these worlds.
Yeah, social mobility was a big one that came up.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Like how do people move up in the world? How's that handled?
And they had some really cool examples, like the Song Dynasty.
Okay.
They had this imperial exam system. So, if you excelled academically,
Mm-hmm.
you can climb the social ladder.
So like merit-based.
Yeah, exactly. But then you have a world like Avatar, The Last Airbender,
Oh, right.
where your bending ability, your fire bending, that's what determines your social standing.
It's like what you're born with.
Yeah, it's tied to your inherent abilities.
Right. So in your world, I guess the question is,
Mm-hmm.
how do people climb that ladder?
How does power shift?
Yeah. Is it knowledge? Is it, who you're related to?
And what kind of conflicts come from that?
Right. Exactly.
Those are the questions that really add that depth.
Yeah.
And speaking of nuance, there was this one video that really focused on how class systems fall.
Oh, wow.
Like how they crumble, both peacefully and violently.
So interesting.
And they use these historical examples like the Tang Dynasty's civil service exam,
Right.
the French Revolution,
Oh, wow.
to show how these different forces can lead to massive power shifts.
Yeah.
But they also looked at fictional worlds like A Song of Ice and Fire
Okay.
and how those power shifts can have these crazy, unexpected consequences.
It's always like a ripple effect, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing, world building isn't just about creating this static snapshot in time.
Right.
It's about understanding how societies change, how they evolve.
Yeah.
How does your world handle those upheavals?
What happens when those power dynamics shift?
It's all connected.
Yeah. And that brings us to history.
Ah, yes. The backbone of any good world.
Right. And these videos really stress that you should view history through multiple lenses.
Absolutely. It's not just about politics,
Right.
It's about culture, technology, economy, even geography and religion.
It all plays a part.
It's all woven together, and there was this one video that used A Song of Ice and Fire again.
Oh, interesting.
As a brilliant example, you've got Westeros and Essos. They have completely different historical narratives. Okay.
Yet they share certain myths, certain legends, much like we do in our own world.
Oh, that's so cool.
Right. And that detail, it just adds so much depth, so much realism.
Yeah, and you can do that in your own world, too. Think about, like, different continents having different versions of the same historical event.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. And how do those stories shape how they live today?
It's fascinating.
Right.
And the videos even go further. They really emphasize understanding those multifaceted causes and consequences of historical events.
Right. It's never just one thing, is it?
No, never. They used real-world examples,
Yeah.
World War I,
Oh, wow.
Caesar's assassination, to show how these seemingly isolated incidents can have this ripple effect
Right.
across entire societies.
So think about how you can weave that into your world. Like, what event sparked a major tech advancement? Or, like, what cultural tradition arose from a war that everyone's forgotten about?
Those are the details that make a fictional world feel real.
Lived in. Exactly. And speaking of intriguing concepts, these videos really dove into the allure of hidden worlds.
No, like secret societies?
Yeah, societies concealed from the everyday, like you see in Fantastic Beasts, Black Panther, troll hunters.
They're all hidden in plain sight.
It's such a cool concept. And there's so many ways to approach it.
Yeah, how do you even hide an entire world?
Right. They could be concealed by magic,
Oh, okay.
advanced technology, or even just the power of disbelief. You know, people just not seeing what's right in front of them.
Wow. And the videos actually break down those different methods.
Yeah, the challenges involved in keeping a society hidden.
I bet that's hard.
It's super tricky. You have to consider things like, population size.
Oh, right.
The larger the population, the harder it is to keep things under wraps.
Yeah.
And then geographical isolation. A remote location, that's naturally going to be easier to hide.
It makes sense.
Right. So think about your own world. Could a hidden society thrive in a bustling city?
Or would they need to be, like, tucked away in the mountains?
Exactly. Or deep beneath the ocean.
That's so cool. And how would their environment shape them, Their culture, their ability to stay hidden?
It all ties back together. These are the questions that make world building so engaging.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about empires.
Yeah, empires.
They're like a huge part of fantasy and sci-fi.
Absolutely.
And these videos, they really dissect how empires work.
They do. They really break it down.
They look at historical examples like the Roman Empire, the Mongols, but they also analyze fictional universes like the world in Avatar
Oh, interesting.
to illustrate how those empires rise and fall.
It's a classic cycle, isn't it?
Right. And they focus on what they call the 3 C's of empires.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What are the 3 C's?
Communication,
Okay.
control,
Mm-hmm.
and commerce.
That makes sense.
And they're all essential.
Right. You need effective communication to govern those vast territories.
Right.
To coordinate your military,
Yeah. And control mechanisms are important too, right?
Absolutely. Whether it's through military might, a strong central government, or a system of laws and regulations,
Right.
you gotta keep things from crumbling from within.
Because you could have rebellions, uprisings.
Exactly. And then, of course, a thriving economy. That's essential
To fuel the empire's growth.
to fund their armies, maintain infrastructure, provide for the people.
It's like this giant, complicated machine.
It is. And all the gears have to be working together smoothly.
Yeah, yeah. And the videos give some really cool advice about creating those systems.
Oh, that's great.
Like they explore different types of governments that could work.
Okay.
From monarchies to republics to theocracies.
Lots of options.
And then they talk about how different cultures and social structures can be woven in to create that complexity.
Like a tapestry, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's like the Fire Nation in Avatar.
Oh, good example.
They had a powerful military, a centralized government,
Right.
and like this whole culture of strength and ambition.
But they also had that rigid social hierarchy.
Right.
And a history of suppressing any dissent.
Yeah. So it shows that a well-developed empire can have both, like good and bad elements.
Absolutely. Just like empires in our own history.
Right. It's not about making a caricature.
No, it's about creating something multifaceted.
Yeah. With its own strengths and weaknesses.
And contradictions. It's got to feel real.
Right. So it's about finding that balance.
Exactly, that nuanced portrayal that goes beyond the simple stereotypes.
It's what makes it believable?
And that's a key takeaway from these videos.
Okay.
World building is about creating depth,
Mm-hmm.
complexity, believability. Even in the most fantastical settings,
Yeah.
you got to make your world feel real.
Lived in.
Like it has its own history, its own culture, its own pulse.
I love that.
It's got to breathe. It's kind of crazy to think about those different dragon archetypes, though, right? Like how they'd actually impact a world. Imagine, like, dragons as beasts of burden.
Right.
It would completely change trade, transportation.
Yeah, like hauling cargo across huge distances.
Exactly. Or even powering machinery. Think about the implications for tech.
It's mind-blowing. And what about dragons as weapons in war?
Oh, man. That would completely reshape everything. Military strategies, the balance of power.
It'd be like whoever controls the dragons controls the world.
Basically, yeah. So for you listening, how would your societies react to dragons being a part of their world? Would they worship them, fear them, exploit them for their power?
There are so many possibilities.
Right. The videos explore all these different ways cultures might view dragons. Symbols of power, sources of wisdom, or even like agents of destruction.
It really shows you how one element, like dragons in this case, can just like ripple outward and affect everything.
Cool.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. We've talked about building up societies, but these videos also looked at like the opposite, fallen civilizations.
Oh, yeah. Lost cities, ancient ruins, always a good time.
They spark my curiosity every time.
They're more than just cool set pieces, though.
Right.
They can teach us a lot.
Yeah.
About history, about ambition, about how even the most advanced societies can be fragile.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the videos even cautions against viewing history through just one lens.
That's important.
Yeah, like our understanding of the past can be so shaped by like our current biases.
Absolutely. We romanticize some figures or eras, and then we demonize others.
Right. History is rarely black and white.
Never. So when you're building the history of your fallen civilization, think about the complexity. What really led to their downfall? Internal struggles, external pressures, some kind of environmental disaster.
The answers to those questions can add so much depth.
And realism. Like, they use the Roman Empire as an example. Its decline happened over centuries. It was this whole web of issues.
Right.
Economic instability, military defeats, political infighting. It wasn't just one big event. It just slowly unraveled.
Wow. So what kind of remnants did your civilization leave behind?
Yeah, that's a great question. Towering ruins, lost technologies, cryptic prophecies.
It's cool to think about how those things can influence the cultures that come after.
Absolutely. Shaping their beliefs, their tech, even their art. It's like standing on the shoulders of giants.
I love that. Okay, this is a big one that came up.
Oh.
Analyzing and critiquing your own work.
Oh, yeah, that's crucial.
So after we pour our hearts into building this world, we have to step back and be our own worst critic.
In a way, yeah. You have to look at it with a critical eye. Ask yourself the tough questions. Does it feel real? Are the cultures distinct? Does the history make sense? Are there inconsistencies?
So it's like becoming an editor for your own world.
Exactly. And the videos gave some great tips for this process. Look for inconsistencies, areas that need more development. Even try looking at it from different perspectives.
Okay, that's interesting.
One video even suggested comparing your world to real-world examples.
Oh, I like that.
So say you have this powerful empire in your world. How does it compare to the Roman Empire or the Mongols? What are its strengths and weaknesses? How does its social structure stack up? Its military might.
It gives you a benchmark.
Yeah, and it helps you see where you might be lacking or where you can add more detail.
Makes sense. What about getting feedback from other people?
Oh, that's huge. Sharing your work with other writers or world builders can be so valuable.
Because they can see things you miss.
Totally.
Okay.
It's easy to get lost in your own creation and lose sight of the bigger picture. A fresh pair of eyes can give you a whole new perspective.
To help you polish those ideas.
Exactly. So it's this constant process of building, analyzing, refining. It's not just about that initial spark of creativity. It's about the work that comes after.
The crafting.
Precisely. And by going through that process, that critical reflection, you elevate your world.
You take it from just a bunch of cool ideas.
To a cohesive, compelling creation.
Okay, let's get into the specifics a bit. We've talked about the big picture stuff. But what about the nuts and bolts of creating a world? Like, the videos had some really cool insights about building realistic cities.
Oh, yeah. Cities. They're essential. The placement of cities, how they develop, it's all critical. The videos talk about all the factors that influence those things.
Right, like access to resources is huge.
Huge. Water, fertile land, trade routes. Think about ancient Rome. It was strategically positioned on a river with access to major Mediterranean trade routes.
That's why it thrived. And then you have modern cities like London, New York.
Global hubs, all because of their coastal locations and their trade networks.
So when you're designing your cities, you have to think about that foundation.
The geography, the economics. Why are they located where they are? What sustains them? How are they connected to the rest of the world?
Right. It all adds to that sense of realism.
And don't forget about the cultural and religious factors.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Cities like Jerusalem, Mecca, those places hold such spiritual weight.
They've drawn pilgrims for centuries. And even in fictional worlds we see that, like Minas Tirith in Lord of the Rings.
Oh, good example.
It wasn't just strategically built, it was the religious and cultural heart of Gondor.
Right. It gives it that extra layer of meaning.
Exactly. It's not just about bricks and mortar, it's about the soul of the city.
So how do your cities evolve over time? Especially with things like rapid tech change. Like, think about how the Industrial Revolution transformed our cities.
Completely changed the landscape. Factories, urban sprawl, unfortunately, also poverty and slums. How would those changes play out in your world?
Right. Imagine a fantasy world having their own Industrial Revolution.
Ooh, I like that. What if magic powered their factories? Airships filled the skies, enchanted machines changed daily life. What would that do to their society?
It makes you think about all those knock-on effects, like the printing press.
Great example. It didn't just change how books were made, it changed how knowledge and ideas spread. It sparked movements that reshaped Europe.
It's all connected.
It is, and that's what makes world building so cool. It's not just about a static setting, it's about how even the smallest changes can have these massive consequences.
Okay, let's talk about empires again.
Oh, yeah.
They pop up everywhere, in fantasy, sci-fi.
Well,
And the videos give some good advice on how to make them feel believable.
they do. Empires usually arise from a few different things: the need for resources, security, the desire to expand, even just pure ambition.
Right, and they use real-world examples to show
Right.
that. The Romans, Mongols, British Empire.
It's all about those driving forces. So when you're making an empire for your world, think about its origin story.
Mm-hmm.
What made it rise to power? Was it a force for good that united people? Or a ruthless conqueror that took what it wanted?
That's a good question. And then how do you maintain that power?
Right, that's where those 3 C's come back in.
Communication, control, commerce.
You got it. Without those things, an empire can't last.
Right. You need good communication networks to manage those vast territories.
Absolutely. And control mechanisms are key, whether it's through the military, a strong government, or laws.
Otherwise, it'll fall apart from the inside.
Exactly. Rebellions, uprisings, just general chaos. And then you need a healthy economy to fuel everything.
The growth, the army, infrastructure.
It all costs money.
So it's like this giant, intricate machine.
It is. All the gears have to be meshing perfectly.
Okay, so how do we create those systems?
Well, the videos had some good ideas. They looked at different types of governments,
Okay.
monarchies, republics, theocracies, and they talked about weaving in different cultures, social structures, to create that complexity.
Like a tapestry. Again.
Exactly, like the Fire Nation in Avatar. They had the
Yeah.
powerful military, the centralized government, that culture of strength and ambition.
Right, right.
But they also had that rigid social hierarchy and a history of squashing dissent.
So even a fictional empire can have good and bad sides to it.
Absolutely. Just like real empires, it's
Yeah.
about creating a multifaceted entity, not a caricature.
With strengths and weaknesses, contradictions.
Exactly.
It has to feel real.
And that's the key. Finding that balance. Avoiding those simple stereotypes, making it nuanced.
Because that's what makes it believable.
And that's really what these videos are all about. World building is about depth, complexity, believability.
Even when we're talking about fantastical things.
Exactly. You have to make your world feel real, lived in, give it a history, a culture, a pulse.
It has to breathe.
It does. So building on that idea of depth and complexity, let's talk about religions.
Okay.
It's something a lot of world builders struggle with.
Yeah.
Creating like believable, engaging religions.
Yeah, it can be tough.
Especially when you're dealing with, polytheistic religions.
Right, right. With all the different gods and goddesses.
Yeah. It can be kind of daunting. Like, where do you even start?
Yeah, you've got these pantheons of deities, each one with their own, like, domains, their own followers.
It's a lot to juggle, but one of the videos had a good point.
Okay.
It said the complexity of a polytheistic religion and how much variation it has
Mm-hmm.
often depends on things like the size of its territory, the number of followers, how old the religion is.
Okay, so like a religion that spans a huge empire with millions of
Yeah,
followers.
exactly. It's going to be more diverse, more interpretations, more practices,
Uh-huh.
compared to a smaller, more localized faith.
Right, right. And a younger religion might not have had the time to develop all those like theological intricacies.
Yeah, the rituals, the deep history. It's like comparing, a sapling to a giant oak tree.
Oh, I like
They're
that.
both trees,
Okay.
but their age and size make a huge difference.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like that example they gave about the spread of Christianity
Oh, yeah.
as it spread through Europe and gained followers.
Mm.
It kind of absorbed elements of older pagan religions.
It did, yeah. Like those saints,
Oh, right.
who are basically reinterpretations of old gods and goddesses.
Mm.
It's that assimilation, that adaptation, that makes religious history so interesting.
And it's something you can use in your own world.
Definitely. So when you're creating a religion for your world, think about its history.
Okay.
How old is it? Where did it start? Has it spread to other places? How has it changed over time?
Yeah, those are good questions. And it's not just about the gods themselves, right?
No, not at all. It's about how those beliefs actually play out in people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
The videos really stress the show, don't tell principle, don't just give us a list of beliefs. Show us how those beliefs affect people's actions, their customs, their values, even just their daily routines.
It's about bringing the religion to life through those details.
Exactly. They used a cool example from The Way of Kings.
Oh, Sanderson.
Yeah, the foreign religion. They have these strict beliefs about gender roles. And it affects everything: education, politics, fashion, how people interact with each other.
Wow. It's woven into everything.
It is. So ask yourself, how does this belief system affect the way people dress, the way they eat, how they raise their kids, how they govern themselves?
It's about those little things.
They make a huge difference. And
Yeah.
don't forget about the different relationships people can have with their gods.
Oh, right. Some people might see them as these distant, powerful beings.
Demanding obedience?
Yeah. But others might see them as more personal, like family almost.
Offering guidance, protection. It's about exploring that whole spectrum of faith.
Yeah, yeah. From the devout follower to the skeptic.
Exactly. Those different perspectives can add so much. It's been awesome diving into these videos with you.
It has.
We've covered so much ground.
I know. From realism to empires to religion.
And the amazing thing is we've just scratched the surface.
I know. There's always more to learn.
More to create, more to discover. But before we go,
Yeah.
one final thought to get those creative juices flowing.
Okay.
We've talked about empires rising and falling, societies changing.
Mm-hmm.
But what about a civilization that chooses to stagnate?
Oh, wow.
A world where progress is actively resisted. Tradition is everything.
And new ideas are, like, shunned.
Exactly. What would that look like? How would their cities be built? What about their technology? What kind of stories would happen in a world where time seems to stand still?
It's a really cool concept.
It is, and it shows how many possibilities world building offers.
It's limitless.
So go out there and create, build your worlds, tell your stories, let your imagination run wild.
Remember, the only limit is your own creativity.
And maybe the laws of physics.
But who needs physics when you have magic?
Right.
Until next time, happy world building.